led to nationwide protests during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Also, we will introduce one exiled Nicaraguan leader who is making a new life in the United States.
And later on, the nation's first ever female vice president visits the University of Miami.
These stories and a whole lot more this afternoon on today's show.
And it starts right now. Hello and welcome to UMTV News. I'm Kayla Davis.
And I'm Justin Walkney. Thank you for joining us. In 2020, Louisville, Kentucky resident Breonna Taylor was killed by the police after they forcefully entered her home. All officers involved with the fatal shooting were fired from the Louisville Police Department after the incident. However, despite this incident, one of the officers was just rehired as a deputy. Breonna Taylor's mother had one word to describe how she felt after learning former Louisville Metro Police officer Miles Cosgrove had been rehired by another department.
Anger, to think that another department would even want this guy to be a part of any department for that matter just angers me.
The Carroll County Sheriff's Department recently hired Cosgrove, according to his attorney.
First and foremost, on behalf of Miles and myself, we don't want anything to take away or diminish the value of the tragedy that happened to Breonna Taylor and her family. We're not minimizing that at all, but he definitely has had a hard road to go in getting back to trying to figure out a way to support his family in the future.
Cosgrove was one of the 3 LMPD officers who fired their weapons during a raid on Breonna Taylor's apartment the night of March 13, 2020. Cosgrove fired more than a dozen times, including the fatal bullet that killed Taylor. He has not faced any criminal charges related to the shooting, though the Louisville Metro Police Department fired him in January of 2021 for failing to use his body camera and violating the department's use of force rules.
I started shooting as soon as I saw the flash, almost simultaneously.
During a department hearing to appeal his firing, Cosgrove expressed remorse.
Do you regret that Breonna Taylor ended up being shot and killed?
Of course. Of course I do. It's horrible.
The department's merit board upheld his dismissal. Despite that, the Carroll City County Sheriff's Department decided to hire Cosgrove. His attorney notes 4 other officers in the raid face federal charges in connection with that raid, 3 accused of lying in order to obtain a search warrant.
There was a grand jury that met at the state of Kentucky that cleared him of any wrongdoing. A federal grand jury was convened and also determined that there were other people who warranted being charged criminally, but not Miles.
It's this good old boy system, so I'm not surprised at all.
Those like her seeking justice for Breonna Taylor say Cosgrove getting a badge back is a danger to the new community he is serving.
The people of Carroll County should be very afraid and should not let this hire stand.
You don't know what to trust anymore or who to trust. It's insane to me.
Cosgrove's new job is located about 50 miles away from Louisville. There have been calls for protests, but so far, no large demonstrations have taken place.
It's official. President Joe Biden is running for a second term. He released a video early Thursday framing the 2024 election as a fight against Republican extremism. Biden argues he needs another 4 years in the White House to fully restore the nation's character. While he has a significant legislative record to run on, Biden is facing low approval ratings and questions about his age. He's already the oldest president in history. This announcement comes 4 years to the day that Biden made his 2020 bid official. And this contest could look similar to that one, with a potential rematch against former President Donald Trump.
I believe history will look back on 4 years of this president and all he embraces as an aberrant moment in time.
Advisors say the campaign launch will not prompt a sudden change to Biden's day-to-day schedule, but he will likely add more fundraising events this summer.
70 diplomats are saved after U.S. Special Forces carried out a dangerous evacuation of the U.S. Embassy in the capital city of war-torn Sudan. Reporter Embrick Isles has the latest details on this developing story. Embrick, what is happening and what are U.S. officials saying today?
Justin, for years, rival military groups have been fighting for control of the North African country. But once again, violence erupted in the capital city. More than 400 people are dead, and countries around the world are scrambling to get citizens and diplomats out of the war-torn country.
Thousands of Americans, many of them dual citizens, potentially in harm's way around the Sudanese capital on Monday. So far, no plans for a large-scale military evacuation for them.
The best advice we can give to those Americans who did not abide by our warnings to leave Sudan and not to travel to Sudan is to stay sheltered in place.
One woman says her sister-in-law, a stranded American teacher, had no warning.
I have been hearing this message in the past 2 days that American citizens were warned and asked to leave. Trillian says that is not true on her end. Trillian's been told by both the U.S. Embassy and the international school that she works for that she has to shelter in place.
Another says bad timing trapped her two brothers there.
My brothers went to go visit a family member, and then this happened a day before they were scheduled to come back to the U.S.
We've continued to be in close communication with U.S. citizens and individuals affiliated with the U.S. government to provide assistance and facilitate available departure routes for those seeking to move to safety via land, air, and sea.
Blinken says several dozen Americans are in the United Nations convoy heading for evacuation at Port Sudan, but many others are still stuck and waiting.
These are U.S. citizens. They've born and raised in this country, and they're being forgotten and left in a land that's completely unknown to them.
In the capital city, a rival military group actually took over one of the labs leading the WHO to say is a, quote, high biological risk. And the U.S. brokered a 72-hour ceasefire, but that's only going to be around for the next 48 hours. Reporting live for UMTV, I'm Embrick Isles.
Thank you, Embrick. One of Fox News' most popular media figures is out. The network announced it is cutting ties with Tucker Carlson, the host of Fox's top-rated newscast. It's the end of one of the most controversial shows in cable history. This comes after a settlement in the defamation lawsuit against the Dominion voting system. The Dominion lawsuit settled for more than $750 million, where texts revealed Carlson contradicting the information he shared on air. Carlson's show consists of xenophobic, anti-immigrant, and a conspiratorial rhetoric. End result, multiple lawsuits were filed against the network, including one filed by former Fox News producer Abby Grossberg, who claims the team engaged in sexism.
This has been a tremendously, I think, painful, even traumatic experience for Fox News to see all their inner communications get splayed out in public. They are one of the most opaque institutions in American society for a very good reason, and that is they don't want people seeing in.
Carlson has yet to comment on the situation and will not have a final farewell show.
Oh, the Supreme ruling that overturned the 1973 Roe v. Wade ruling last year has prompted many states to change their laws and restrictions on abortion, and North Dakota is the most recent state to do so. Yesterday, North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum signed into law one of the strictest abortion bans in the country. The new legislation bans the abortion procedure throughout pregnancy with very small exceptions up until the 6-week mark. And an abortion within the first 6 weeks is only allowed if the pregnancy is a result of rape, incest, or medical injury. The law is expected to go into effect immediately, and there are no abortion clinics left in the state, establishing themselves as a strictly pro-life state. While many supporters state the law protects all human life, some worry there will be fatal repercussions for women and girls.
Time for a short break now, but when we return,
we will tell you what is making people unhappy at the happiest place in the world. Details when we return.
RAIN has been supporting survivors of sexual violence since 1994.
We have teams dedicated to education, prevention, and response.
Improving the criminal justice system.
And changing the way America thinks about sexual violence.
Our hotline is 100% confidential. It's anonymous, it's safe, and free.
Whether you're looking for information or just want someone to listen, we'll be there.
You are not alone.
You are not alone.
You are not alone.
Porque siempre voy a atender a tu llamada.
Because I'm here to support you with what you need to heal.
Because I will work to prevent violence and...
Monday, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis traveled to Japan to meet with the country's prime minister as a part of his four-nation trade mission. Many see this trip as an attempt by the potential Republican candidate to heighten his diplomatic presence. DeSantis says his overseas trip, which also includes South Korea, the United Kingdom, and Israel, is aimed at improving economic relationships and instilling Florida's position as an economic leader.
South Florida is known as a destination for exile immigrants running away from persecution of their homelands. Giselle Arciniega joins us now live to tell us what some Nicaraguan immigrants are doing in Miami to help their homeland. Giselle?
The Nicaraguan community in exile gathered to commemorate the bloody protests against their government. This occurred in Nicaragua 5 years ago, and now they're raising their voice here in Miami.
Felix Maradiaga is a former presidential candidate from Nicaragua, of the political opposition for President Daniel Ortega. He's also the president of the Foundation for Freedom, which is an organization that promotes human and civil rights in Nicaragua.
Wanted to run for president to change the way that the political system was operating in Nicaragua. He was a fresh candidate. He didn't come from the oligarchy like many of the other candidates. He was just a smart young man from a rural area, Matagalpa, that through his own hard work was able to go to Harvard and Yale and genuinely wanted to give back to Nicaragua.
On April 15, Felix and his team gathered the Nicaraguan community in Miami to mark the 5th anniversary of a bloody protest in Nicaragua.
In 2018, the Nicaraguan people was fed up of all these arbitrary actions against our individual freedoms. So people went to the streets in huge numbers. The Sandinista police replied by killing over 350 people, most of them young students.
The peaceful protest that turned deadly was the reaction of the Nicaraguan people after years of unsatisfaction with their government.
So I represented the national unity as their candidate. However, Ortega responded by arresting all the political candidates, including myself. I was arrested and placed in a prison popularly known as El Chipote. Just the name of El Chipote brings fear into the people because it's a place known for its torture. It's a place known for inhumane conditions.
Felix spent 611 days in jail in Nicaragua and was charged with treason. However, on February 9, 2023, Felix was released and immediately left for Washington, D.C., together with more than 200 other political prisoners.
We don't really know the backstory in terms of what happened that triggered our release. We know for sure that there were significant and targeted sanctions against the Ortega regime.
Two sanctions were imposed by the U.S. administration on the government of Nicaragua to block companies of making investment in Nicaragua. The Nicaraguan community in exile will be organizing events to keep raising their voice against the Nicaraguan government.
Well, we're going to continue to work with the State Department, the Department of Treasury, the Senate and Congress to continue to pressure the Ortega regime. We understand the danger of raising your voice in Nicaragua inside of the territory, and so we are your voices outside of the territory.
This past weekend, the Nicaraguan community not only gathered at Doral, they also organized events in Washington, D.C., Costa Rica, and Los Angeles. I am Giselle Arciniega, reporting live for UMTV.
Thank you, Giselle. Walt Disney World is making some not-so-magical announcements. The company says it is laying off several thousand workers this week. Disney is eliminating 3% of its global workforce, or about 7,000 jobs. The cuts affect those who work in the parks under the Entertainment and Experiences divisions, as well as ESPN. This is the second of 3 waves of layoffs. Disney's chief executive Bob Iger says the goal is to save $5.5 billion.
This weekend, one club with members across the nation took over Shoma Hall here on the UM Coral Gables campus for a special competition. The UM Debate Club hosted the National Miami Oceans Debate Tournament on Saturday and Sunday. Each team spent 2 months researching the topic. This year, they voted in favor of against the acceleration of open ocean agriculture. UM debated in favor. The final round saw North Carolina's Appalachian State take on California's Claremont College. Claremont was crowned the debate champion. Although UM did not advance to the finals, our university's team captain, Iman Sami, won first speaker of the tournament.
This style of debate is called civic debate, which is mainly an educational format where you have to do research beforehand. We've never hosted a tournament, so we decided we attend tournaments for this type all the time across the country, so time to put ourselves on the map.
In the nation at the ACC Championships, and last year they won first place. There will be more debates and events to come.
We will take a short break now, but when UMTV returns,
we'll bring you the latest on the never-ending housing crisis for University of Miami students.
Plus, we'll introduce to a critically endangered animal that one Florida zoo has welcomed. UMTV News will be right back.
Right! No! Bro, but you're not even gonna do anything! Yes, I was! Yes, no!
International Airport this past Friday to pay a visit to UM's Rosenstiel Marine Campus. The purpose of her visit was to announce a $560 million project to help protect communities against the impacts of climate change. The order tells executive branch agencies to use data and research to figure out how pollution is hurting people's health. Under this order, agencies will be required to tell communities if any toxic substances were released from a federal facility.
I am proud to announce that our administration will invest $562 million to fund climate resilient projects in 149 coastal cities, towns, and counties across America.
The Vice President's trip came a day after President Biden announced the creation of the White House Office of Environmental Justice. Its goal is to ensure that the exposure to pollution does not get worse in communities or cause more damage to the environment.
For decades, underclassmen at the University of Miami have been guaranteed on-campus housing. But in recent years, tradition has changed due to too many new students and not enough housing to accommodate them. The school has come up with temporary solutions like Thesis Hotel until the new housing is completed in 2025. But the prices are just not feasible for many students. Sophomore Dylan Thompson spent all last semester squatting in friends' dorms in Lakeside because he was not guaranteed an affordable housing option.
And my friend, he let me stay in his room, and I put my carpet on the floor, and I had a pillow. And so I just slept on that like that for the whole semester. So I slept on my carpet or whatever.
Student Affairs Dr. Pat Whiteley did her very best to help him find a good option for this semester. Though Dylan got the help he needed, many students are still struggling and were even forced to leave the university. Florida Zoo has welcomed some critically native range as of 2021. The newborns will stay with their parents for around 3 weeks, released into their native habitat in Central Florida to help bolster the bird's tiny population. Honestly, that's so cute. I kind of always wanted a little bird, but a grasshopper too.
Yeah, honestly, a beautiful story, but as long as the population is repairing itself.
Absolutely.
That's it for the final UMTV News episode of the semester. Thank you for joining us.
Good luck in finals and congratulations to all the graduates. Have a great night and stay safe.